Okay. Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to our YouTube live cast on behalf of CancerVax. My name is Byron Elton. I'm CEO of CancerVax and a cancer survivor, and delighted to spend a few minutes with you here today, this afternoon, coming to you from beautiful Palm Springs, California, to give you the latest comings and goings of CancerVax and talk about what we're trying to do and what we've done so far and where we're going. And really want to take it kind of behind the scenes of where the science is right now. So we've had lots of investor questions recently like, well, when are we going to see some data? What's happening in the labs right now? And what are the next steps for your stage of development? And that's exactly what this live stream is going to be about today. So let's talk about where we are right now in our development. We are in the heart of preclinical animal work, and why that matters is important for you to understand. So it's important to start about talking about animal studies. What are animal studies for? So before any new therapy goes into human beings, you have to demonstrate two things in animals. One is safety, toxology. That's just the therapy doesn't cause any harm. The second is the efficacy signal, that it does something biologically meaningful and significant. These aren't just boxes to check off. That's the foundation that regulators use to decide whether the conversation continues, whether it's even safe to talk about human trials. So let's talk about what we're doing right now. Our team is running a battery of studies in controlled research animals, in this case mice, where we look at about 5 different things. One is biodistribution studies. Where does our drug travel, and where does it end up in the body? We study the vital organ effects that it has on the clinical animals, the immune system engagement, dose tolerability, which is really important, and biomarkers that show that the therapy is doing precisely what we designed it to do. So these studies generate toxology reports, and they generate efficacy assessments, both which go into an IND submission later on. We'll talk about IND in just a minute. So it feels like a lot of times, it does to us too, that it feels slow, but it's fast in value. And this is the stage where precision, repeatability, and discipline matter most. Once you have consistent results in the animals, then you can actually build a regulatory pathway and a case toward human studies. If you make mistakes here, they can cost you a lot of time and money later on. So we take this very seriously. We don't rush things. We document everything. This is the classic law of the harvest right now. So what comes after these ongoing animal studies? Well, the first step is the IND enabling package. So let's talk a little about IND, something you've heard before. It stands for Investigational New Drug. So in order to file an IND, an investigational new drug, with the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, you have to assemble 4 things. Toxology reports, which we talked about, pharmacology reports, manufacturing and quality summaries, and your proposed clinical trial plan. Once you submit that, the FDA has a month, 30 days, to respond before clinical trials can actually begin. So what's the regulatory interaction look like? Well, they start, they've got questions. They ask those questions, and we answer them. They request more data, which we provide. This is the phase where rigor and alignment are really, really more important than speed itself. The next phase is the clinical trial, and that's the first step into humans. Small groups, very careful monitoring. And it's really all about 2 things. It's about safety and it's about dosing. So in biotech, progress isn't always headline data. It's really more about building a regulatory ready body of evidence that make trials possible. I want to talk to you a little bit about an example we talked about last week. We've talked about it for a couple of weeks, actually, that you might remember, that came from the news very recently in February. And that was where Eli Lilly and Company, one of the pharmaceutical giants, announced the acquisition of Orna Therapeutics for up to $2.4 billion. That's a really important one if you have been following CancerVax, if you've invested, if you're looking to invest, if you're looking to enhance your investment. This is really important to study the acquisition of Orna Therapeutics by Eli Lilly and Company, because that's a deal that signals that Big Pharma has confidence in science even before clinical outcomes are in. And that's the key point that we really want to emphasize today, that Orna was acquired by Eli Lilly before, even though its lead program had not yet started its clinical trials. So Orna, and feel free to Google Orna Therapeutics. Their lead asset is what they call their CAR T therapy candidate. It's described on their website, was described in the press releases as clinical trial ready. Now that means it's got significant and robust preclinical data, and they are approaching a filing for human studies. But that still means it's preclinical. Why is that important? Because that's exactly where CancerVax is today. Well, what does that tell us? It tells us three main things. One, that Big Pharma is willing to invest in platforms at very early stages. Lilly, as an example, didn't buy Orna after phase 1 or phase 2 proof. They bought them with preclinical promise, backed by good science and delivery platforms. The second thing we learn is valuations can be driven by belief in the underlying biology and the intellectual property. Orna's circular RNA platform and its in vivo CAR T relevance were attractive before the human data even existed. And then we talked about milestones. Milestones matter. The up to $2.4 billion that was announced in this acquisition includes milestone-based payments. So what does that mean? It means that Lilly has structured part of the payment dependent upon scientific progression. And this is an example that really kind of reframes on how to look at this phase. It's not just waiting. It's a strategic inflection point where serious science begins attracting serious attention. Well, how does all that relate to where CancerVax is today? Well, turns out we're generating the exact types of data that validate biological hypotheses. Animal toxology and efficacy work is the foundational evidence for a regulatory filing and eventual clinical development. We also know that external interest follows strong preclinical science. The example we talked about with Orna shows us that the big players recognize preclinical potential and they invest accordingly. They don't wait for phase 1 results. One of the reasons is, and we've talked about this in weeks past, is because of the patent cliff. Many of their huge income generating patent protected drugs that they sell, like Keytruda as an example, those patents are coming off in the next couple of years. $300 billion coming off in the next 2 years. And so they need to replace them. They do some of that internally, but they're always on the lookout for opportunities to acquire, like Orna Therapeutics, like CancerVax. So this is the phase that's about building real value. So when you hear no news, remember that actual biotech value accumulates when you prove safety and mechanism before human testing. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. And we're not rushing it. So investors, and we get it, we're exactly the same. They want big numbers and early results. Of course, we want that too. But right now, the real story is, and this is important, it's discipline, it's scientific validation, and regulators ready data being built step by step, block by block, no shortcuts. You have to do the work. It's the law of the harvest. So when we do come back with results, whether they're signals of efficacy or consolidated safety readouts, we'll be able to interpret them with confidence because the groundwork, the foundation has already been solid. And that's how durable biotech value is created. So look, if you're new to CancerVax, if you're maybe here for the first time, go to cancervax.com, cancervax.com. A lot of great information there. A short explainer video. Particularly impressive is our scientific advisory board, our full-time people we have on staff and the advisory board, including notable giants in the industry of immunotherapy and oncology, like Mark Davis from Stanford, who gets approached all the time, saw what we were doing at CancerVax and said, yeah, I'd like to be a part of that. So go to cancervax.com, spend some time there. If you'd like to speak with a CancerVax member, go to callcancervax.com. Very simple calendaring, scheduling app there. You can schedule a call to talk to a real life person. We have calls every day with people from all over the world. Or you can visit us at startengine.com/cancervax to make an investment. We've made it really, really easy. Barriers are very simplified for you to invest. Many of you have already invested, are looking to perhaps learn more or even enhance that investment. That's where you want to go. startengine.com/cancervax. So really appreciate you joining us here today. Stay tuned. We do these every week at Thursdays at this time because we're really building towards major milestones. We made a lot of progress last year. This is the year that it all comes together and coalesces. And when we do have that news, you guys will be the first to know. So thank you very, very much, and have a great weekend.